Hey out there, I'm Jeff DeRiso and welcome to another edition of Mind Hack. Today, Japanese scientists know what you're about to say, a defense industry insider's view on weaponizing the brain, and the problem of psychological asymmetry. Newsbud is a 100% people-funded media outlet, which means we depend on people like you to keep us going. So please support us on Kickstarter and become a member of the Newsbud community. The first article I want to look at today was published in a Japanese newspaper called Asahi Shimbun, which translates directly to Morning Sun. The article was published on May 11, 2017 by Takashi Miyazawa. The title says, "Japanese scientists know what you are about to say." The article reports that researchers at Tohoyashi University of Technology in Japan have developed technology that recognizes syllables before they are spoken just by analyzing brainwaves. This is almost the exact same technology that Facebook recently announced they were researching at the F8 Developer Conference. One of the researchers, a professor of information processing named Tsuneo Nitta, says, "We've studied brainwaves that we observed when recalling syllables without the voice bit. The technology will lead to the development of devices that could help people who have difficulty speaking due to diseases or disabilities." The article continues to say that by observing and categorizing the brainwave patterns of their subjects, the researchers were able to recognize the syllables that correspond with each brainwave pattern, and therefore distinguish the syllable before it was spoken. The team can currently recognize the digits 1 through 10 with 90% accuracy using this method. Tsuneo Nitta, however, remarks that the application of this will be challenging because brainwave patterns vary widely from individual to individual. He says that they are planning to overcome this by creating basic brainwave patterns and letting the device learn individual characteristics. The team is planning to apply this technology to a brain-computer interface headset device and to link it with smartphones. This ability to translate brain signals into digital signals will no doubt be helpful for people who are currently unable to communicate their thoughts to others. However, the potential risk for abuses of this technology are extraordinary, and they should not go unmentioned. While I think it's nice for us to discuss how cutting-edge research could help our fellow humans, the realities of the world of brain research indicate to me that this technology is much more likely to be used as a weapon against humans than as a tool to heal them. And I think we'll see why when we look at our next article. The next article I want to look at today was published in National Defense Magazine on May 11, 2017, by Dr. James Giordano. James Giordano is a professor of neurology and biochemistry who has served as an advisor to the Defense Department, DARPA, and the EU Human Brain Project. The article is entitled "Weaponizing the Brain: Neuroscience Advancements Spark Debate." Giordano begins the article by giving a timeline for these advancements in neuroscience. In 2008, the National Academy of Science reported brain sciences showed potential for warfare applications, but were not yet operationally viable. That changed in 2014 when they released a subsequent report stating that the brain sciences were, quote, "of definitive value and a realistic concern for the military." In this time period, the author states that our military has achieved the capability to, quote, "create and exploit neuroscientific methods and technologies to access the brain and assess and affect its functions of cognition, emotion, and behavior." Giordano says that this can have many applications, such as treating brain injury, creating super soldiers, linking brains to weapons, or manipulating groups or leaders into taking actions they wouldn't normally take. He references many types of technologies that we have previously discussed on MindHack, such as neurofeedback, transcranial direct current stimulation, and brain-computer interfaces. He also discusses the possible use of something called neuroweapons, According to Giordano, the purpose of these weapons is, quote, to affect the nervous system and modify opponents' thoughts, feelings, senses, actions, health, or in some cases, to incur lethal consequences. My question in response to that is, how exactly are you figuring out who your opponent is? And what criteria justifies your targeting of them with these neuro weapons? The author then employs the doublethink that is very common among defense industry apologists when he says, when viewed in a positive light, such approaches could, and arguably should, be employed to prevent warfare. He then cites programs at DARPA and a similar group called the Intelligence Advanced Research Projects Activity, which he claims could be effective in reducing the risk of violence. These three programs are the Sociocultural Content in Language Program, the Metaphor Program, and the Narrative Networks Program. When you read between the lines of Giordano's academic jargon in describing these programs, what they really amount to are ways for us to force our will upon other countries without the use of physical violence. Though I would argue, and I think many of you would agree with me, that the act of forcing your will upon someone else is an inherently violent act, regardless of whether it is physical or non-physical in nature. Giordano even acknowledges that creating neuro-modified super soldiers could be dangerous to the health of the soldiers themselves. He also acknowledges the growing concern that these approaches could turn soldiers into, quote, amoral combative automatons. This reference to super soldiers is interesting, especially since recently there have been several self-proclaimed whistleblowers who claim to have been part of a secret military super soldier program. Though there is not sufficient evidence to verify any of these claims, it is worth noting that one of the people claiming to be part of this secret super soldier program, Max Spears, recently died under mysterious circumstances. After acknowledging the possible dangers of going down this road of neuromodification, Dr. Giordano then continues his apologetic for the national security state by attempting to justify these neuromodification techniques despite their possible catastrophic consequences. He says, but while such questions and concerns may suggest the need for a reflective pause, it's important to note that brain research and its corresponding technologies are becoming ever more international, and a number of countries such as China and Russia and some US allies are engaged in these pursuits and are interested in their military viability and use. This creates a situation that tends to sustain, if not advance, the pace and extent of research, development, and incorporation of neuroscience and technology in intelligence and military initiatives. So, in other words, those foreigner bad guys will use this technology against us, so we have to pool all of our resources into using it against them first. Yeah, that'll show them. The next few paragraphs of the article are full of nauseating, fear-mongering rhetoric disguised as intellectual pontification, all aimed to drive the point home that foreigners might use these weapons to, quote, disrupt public safety, stability, and health. So, according to Dr. James Giordano, who is the chief of the Neuroethics Studies program at Georgetown University, our best solution is to race to develop this technology before Russia or China does, regardless of the risk of catastrophic consequences. This article is a great example of someone who is employed by the national defense industry doing extensive verbal gymnastics in an attempt to morally justify the practice of warfare. Of course, those who make money researching weapons of war have no incentive to promote an agenda of peace and shared prosperity, because that would put them out of a job. So when he refers to efforts to use brain science to, quote, prevent warfare, that is really nothing more than a lame effort to disguise the economic ambitions of the warfare industry behind a facade of virtue and national pride. Giordano ends the article with a remarkably vague and confusing plea to the readers. He says, in these times of rapidly reduced budgets and limited resources, It thus becomes ever more important to accurately estimate the relative benefit, burden, risks, and threats that specific types and applications of neuroscience and technology will incur, and to develop and maintain a proactive posture to ensure the possibilities for these developments both now and in the future. Wow, that was a mouthful. But the very first statement of that sentence says, "In these times of rapidly reduced budgets and limited resources." I'm not sure what statistics Dr. Giordano is referring to when he says this, but let's take a look at a graph to see how the United States defense budget stacks up against the top other spenders in the world. Though advances in digital technology may make it easier to control or influence someone's behavior, can we really entrust this technology to authority figures to use it for the right reasons? And that is the subject of today's Mind Hack Flashback. Today we flash back to August 14th, 1971, when a psychology professor at Stanford University, Philip Zimbardo, began an experiment in the basement of a university building. The experiment, funded by the U.S. Office of Naval Research, sought to investigate the relationships between prisoners and prison guards. Zimbardo chose 24 psychologically stable male participants with no criminal history, and randomly assigned half to be prisoners and the other half to be guards. Zimbardo, acting as the superintendent of this mock prison, instructed the students acting as guards that they would have complete power over the prisoners for the duration of the 2-week-long experiment. By the second day, both the prisoners and the guards began to internalize their roles. One of the students acting as a guard took it upon himself to begin creating ways to humiliate and dehumanize the prisoners. This initially created a backlash and rebellion among the prisoners. But as the guards continued to ramp up the abusive and divisive tactics, many of the prisoners came to accept and follow the orders given by the guards, out of fear that they would be made an example. After just 4 days, 2 of the prisoners had quit the experiment after the abuse had reached an unbearable level. A new student brought in mid-experiment to act as a prisoner responded almost immediately by going on a hunger strike, which resulted in him being put into solitary confinement, and the other prisoners were punished for his behavior. On August 20th, after 6 days of terror, a graduate student named Christina Maslach demanded Zimbardo end the experiment due to the inhumane and trauma-inducing treatment of his subjects. This experiment is often discussed in introductory psychology courses, and many believe it is evidence that people's behaviors are a product of their environment and their status within it. Others have pointed out that not all the guards exhibited cruelty toward the prisoners, and most of the abuse was the result of a single guard who was the primary instigator of conflict between the two groups. In interviews, this student, named Dave Eshelman, claims that he was just playing a role as a way to make the experiment more interesting. Still, the other guards did nothing to put a stop to the abusive tactics by Eshelman, and the prisoners came to accept his dominance because he was arbitrarily granted a position of authority over them. The results of the 1971 Stanford prison experiment show at the very least that people's behavior is greatly influenced by their perceived social status within their environment. And that is today's Mind Hack Flashback. Our final article for today was posted on May 14th, 2017, as part of the Book of Life, which is a collaboration between several authors as part of something called the School of Life. The School of Life is a London-based educational institution whose stated mission is developing emotional intelligence. The headline reads, "The Problem of Psychological Asymmetry." The article begins by making the observation that as humans, we have a deep and unique knowledge of ourselves, whereas our knowledge of others is only limited to what they successfully communicate to us about themselves. This psychological asymmetry is built into the human condition, and as a result, we can never truly understand the experience of what it feels like to be someone else, no matter how much we might pretend to. The authors believe that this asymmetry creates a bias where many people perceive themselves to be much more odd, strange, or quirky than they actually are relative to others. The real reason for this bias is that they simply have much more data about themselves than they do about others. This attachment to unrealistic perceptions about others can produce a profound loneliness and shyness, according to the article. It also can create a cycle where we mimic the external personas of others in an attempt to connect with and understand them. According to the article, there are two solutions to this psychological asymmetry, and they are art and love. The article reads, quote, "Art provides us with accurate portrayals of the inner lives of strangers, and with grace and compelling charm, shows us how much they share in troubles and hopes we thought we might be alone in experiencing. And love gives us an occasional, deeply precious sense of security to reveal who we really are to another person, and the opportunity to learn about their reality from a position of extreme proximity." This solution was a little too fluffy for my taste, as it sounded like a vague, feel-good pronouncement from a New Age guru. Now, obviously, I'm not against the practices of art and love, but I think when defining solutions, we have to be a little bit more practical. Here are the two practical solutions that I came up with. Number one, accept the fact that people may misunderstand you no matter how well you communicate, but still do your best to continue improving your communication with others. And number two, do not assume that your understanding of someone else encompasses the entirety of who they are, and instead ask them questions that will further your understanding of them. One thing that came to my mind that was not discussed in this article is what happens when someone's behavior is in contradiction to their publicly curated persona, and possibly with their health as an individual. What is the best way to reach out and help that person? I've struggled with this problem myself. My personal view is that observing people's patterns of behavior will often give you a better indicator of who they are than simply listening to their public pronouncements. What I've learned from my experience and in taking inspiration from the legendary philosopher Socrates is that the best approach is to ask more questions to get to the heart of the conflict. This asking of questions will result in one of two scenarios. One, the person in answering your questions will come to understand the contradiction on their own and make the necessary adjustments in their behavior. Or two, you will find out more knowledge about the person which better explains why they are behaving that certain way, which will further inform your communication strategy for the future. Many of us are very quick to point out the errors in others, but are often blind to the errors that we ourselves commit. So I think the best solution to mitigating the consequences of psychological asymmetry is to concentrate our energies on adequately communicating our own identity to others, and to subject all human judgments, especially our own, to greater inquiry. In other words, teach others to behave wisely by modeling wise behavior yourself, and therefore setting the right example. That's it for today's edition of Mind Hack. Thank you so much for watching, and please share this video with your friends and family. Please continue supporting our 100% people-funded media outlet by donating to our Kickstarter campaign. We can only continue doing the work that we do with the help of people like you. I'm Jeff DeRiso, and I'll see you next time.
You, our generous supporters and community members, are the reason we exist. You are the power that has kept us operating and expanding towards this amazing success. And you are the sole determinant of the continuation and steady expansion of Newsbud operations. Please join us. Join the Newsbud movement by kindly and generously pledging towards this 100% people-funded media with integrity. Yes, we have accomplished a lot, but this is only the beginning, And that is my promise to you.